Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl Podcast, a 3-time award-winning show that aims to motivate and inspire you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you're passionate about adventure, challenge and learning from women who have overcome obstacles and achieved remarkable things, then this is the podcast for you. Every Tuesday at 7 a.m, new episodes go live featuring incredible women who share their stories, insights and tips to help you achieve your dreams and goals. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron. Visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me with Tough Girl Challenges, give shout outs and recommend other Tough Girl Podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com. Jen Scotney, 36, vegan, ultrarunner, who works as a human rights lawyer. So that was the title of the Tough Girl podcast that we recorded together way back. The episode came out on October 30th, 2018. So we probably spoke maybe, 4 or 5 weeks before that. But a lot has changed since then. But back then, not all of it has changed. But my little introduction has got, Jen has always loved to be active, from running around while growing up in the Peak District to playing football with the boys. Leaving school and heading off to university, she was painfully shy and struggled to talk to people. However, as she was studying to be a barrister, she was thrown into the deep end and worked hard to overcome this. While studying and working, exercise took a back seat until she changed her life by becoming self-employed and moving away from London. After the loss of her father and brother in quick succession, she started going running as a way to deal with the pain. Although she struggles to call herself a runner, she has run multiple ultras in the country and has completed the Dig Deep Ultra, the Spine Challenge and the Northern Traverse. During this podcast, Jen shared more about her passion for running, what she eats, how she trains, recovers, and also gives top tips and advice for you to complete your own ultra challenge. So Jen, it's been 6 years. We've actually spoken in between, but 6 years since you've been on the Tough Girl podcast, and so much has changed. So my question to you, if you were to introduce yourself now, how would you introduce yourself?
Wow. You know what? That is one of the toughest questions in terms of trying to pin down that now and whether to do it in terms of my job or location or anything like that. But to give a bit of an introduction from an update, it would be that I am now based in the Scottish Highlands and I have a book called Running Through the Dark, which was only out very recently. And I love thinking back to who I was 6 years ago when I was just getting into ultra running and had done some long ones. I went on to run quite a few more ultras, but a little bit of a spoiler is that I don't run anymore. So yeah, I'm in my Scottish Highlands. I am writing, podcasting. That started since we last spoke. So I've got my own podcast about resilience. And I guess the focus now is a lot around resilience and getting through tough times. And I've had some more tough times since we spoke. And it's hard, isn't it? Who are we?
Who are we? Oh, even though I know that it's a spoiler, but that you don't run anymore. I mean, would you like to share more about what happened in that instance and how you're doing with that and how you're adapting to almost, I suppose, that change in your identity from being an ultra runner and completing in these ultras to I don't even like saying it, to like not running anymore. And also
ex-runner, I know.
Ex-runner, it's heartbreaking.
I know, although somebody, actually I'm going to name drop, Mimi Anderson, when I was chatting to her, because I know that she'd been through similar in terms of giving up running ultras. And she was like, well, look, we don't say that Linford Christie is an ex-runner. We still call him a runner. So you can always be a runner. But I suppose that label and that identity is something that's faded, really. It's not necessarily something that I do need to cling on to, though it is something that I did cling on to for a while and it was really hard. And I suppose I haven't listened back to that episode for so long, but I think I can imagine me talking about all these really positive things that I got from running. And you mentioned some of them in the old intro, like getting my confidence. I was so shy and running just got me out to new places, meeting new people. I was working with brands. I was on podcasts such as yours. And that was such a positive change. And then other things. But what I found is that it can be taken away really abruptly. And I loved running. It was part of my life. I'd given up being a lawyer. I was working as a running coach. You know, I'd made it not just my identity as a hobby, but also a career, and my friends and my husband. It was all about running. And so it was a huge loss to lose that. And I guess part of processing that was me writing. And I never thought that it would be published, that writing that I put down. But it's out in the world. And I think that's a really interesting conversation. You know, the positives that we get from not just running, but maybe just outdoor adventures or new things or big activities that are big parts of our lives. And then what happens when we can't do it? And I think if it is taken away, then it really makes you look at what's left. And I found that there were some really fragile parts of me where my worth was on me doing big challenges and runs. And so, yeah, it's been a real journey.
Yeah. And you mentioned, you know, especially to help you with the processing, that you found writing sort of really useful. Was that you like journaling? Was that just thinking, actually, I don't know, like just wanting to get it out of your head, get it onto paper, and then almost like rip it up, and just get it out of your system? And what did that process look like? Was it structured? Were you like trying to journal every day or write for 15, 20 minutes? Was it like just bullet points? You know, have you always written?
No, I hadn't written at all. I mean, so for 14 years, I was a lawyer, and I mean, I had to do vast quantities of writing for that job, but it was never personal. It was never about me. There was some like dry legal drafting, and then there was a lot to do with my clients. So no, I didn't write at all. And how I got into writing was so you must have interviewed me after I'd done the coast to coast. So that's 190 miles. And then my dream was to run the Pennine Way, which is 268 miles. And where I used to live was near the start. So that was what I dedicated quite a few years training, recceing. And as part of that, I wanted to kind of hear about the women that had run it outside of the spine race. And I was really struggling to find any. And I spoke to a lot of the men, and they had some great stories about the Pennine Way. And I really wanted to think about why they were doing it, and maybe that would help me understand why I wanted to do it. And that I then thought that I wanted to collect those stories, so write about those. And I told a publisher when I was doing a photo shoot for them that I wanted to do this. And I think he said it might be quite interesting, which was a yes. I got a book deal. And so I started trying to write their stories. I did struggle actually putting into words somebody else's story. And I suppose it was more of a diary about my training, all geared to the Pennine Way. And that's when I started writing. And what I found though was that it was just a sense of getting this sort of tangled, knotty mess out of my head and onto a page. I mean, digital age, I was typing onto a laptop, so it wasn't any like ripping up or actually I didn't use a pen. I was typing it, and it wasn't structured. It was just when I felt like it. And I went through a real period of illness, chronic illness. And I mean, there were times I was bedbound and wasn't thinking about writing at all for months at a time. But in the times that I felt able to write and felt like I wanted to, I felt it really flowed, and it really helped me. There was kind of helped me make sense of it. I also at the time was trying to keep a lot hidden just from people. By that point, I'd left law and I was employed. I was trying to just act normal there and not talk about my illness. And I think I felt a bit of shame, like I wasn't coping, like my body couldn't cope with the stress of life. So it was a place where I could put down what I was thinking, but I never showed it to anybody. I never thought that anybody would see it. And I think that it would have been different if I had thought this was going to be a book all those years later. So yeah, that's really how it came about. And then when I had shown the publishers, I thought they'd just say no. They were asking how this other book was coming on, the one that I was supposed to be writing. And I said it had gone off on a bit of a tangent, and I showed them, and they were really encouraging and said, no, keep writing that. And then they got to a point where I thought, well, actually, I just need to get this out of my head. And I then set myself the task of just 500 words a day. So I'd go out with my dog and then come back, have a coffee and write. And it really just flowed out. And then I just got to a point where I felt I've said everything I need to say. And then I just, press send and close the laptop.
How did you feel after that? Was there a sense of relief or fear? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of trepidation, because these were things, I mean, I sent it to Marcus, my husband, and there's things in the book that he didn't know. I found it that difficult to talk about some of the things in the book. And also I talk about my dad and my brother, and I found that people don't really want to talk or ask you about people that have died, just either whether that's their own discomfort or they're worried about upsetting you and things. So to really lay down the circumstances of those deaths, it felt like it was just sort of opening myself up a little bit. And although I probably look quite active on social media, I don't really share, or haven't before this book, shared really deep things about myself. So it felt a little bit vulnerable to press send, but that was still quite a long kind of early in the process. It wasn't, there was still time. And at each point I just thought, at some point they'll just go, no, this isn't the book we want. And so it was quite a shock at the start of this year, 2024, when actually things started moving and I had to face up to the fact that this was going to be published.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting is, even as I was reading out the bio, there is that sort of little paragraph about the loss of your father and your brother. And I was initially thinking, maybe I shouldn't read this out. Because almost, I don't know why. I was almost like, I suppose I just didn't want to not remind you of it, not that you can, ever forget about it, but I suppose I just didn't want to bring it up or cause you, any more pain. And it's something that you do, talk about, in the book as well. And as like, it's quite the start is quite brutal, I would say.
Yeah, I do go straight in to talk about the period, because my brother was missing for a week before we found his body. So yeah, I do talk about that, and that is something that nobody ever asks me about, or sometimes I suppose that can be quite often just a really innocent question of, have you got any brothers or sisters? And I think I have got two brothers, but one of them died, and so it's really, that can be quite an awkward situation, because it's like, I do want to talk about him, but also it's seeing, the other person might not be ready, or I might not know them well enough to kind of hold that space when I just mention him. So yeah, I don't think we do grief and bereavements very well in this country, in this society. And that's definitely something that I've tackled in my podcast about resilience, because I speak to people a lot about bereavement, and I find that it is something that people who are going through that want to talk about, whether it's talking about the person that meant a lot to them, or just how they feel. It's something that we do shy away from. And I quite like the fact that we can talk about it in spaces.
I think it's also, it's such an individual thing, isn't it? And it's almost like there's that choice of actually how much you want to share. Because I was reading another post where it's like, I don't owe anybody an explanation about, one of the worst times of my life. For when I say my life, you don't owe anyone any explanation for one of your worst times in your life. And so it's, just going through all of that pain, that emotional pain. But then, one of the other things that you mentioned that also, even in the description of your book, rising through the dark, the rise and fall of an ultrarunner. I struggle even saying fall of an ultrarunner. It just feels, But
I didn't write that bit. That's definitely come from the publishers. And I did struggle with that initially. I thought like, oh God, does it look like I was caught doping? Something like that. But I think like I said, I got to the point with my words where I just felt like I said what I needed to say. Like it felt like it had to come out. Maybe it was just all those years of not talking about it. And so after that, for me, it became quite a different process where I handed over a lot of control to the publishers. And then there's also the fact that it's out now. It's handing over control. I have no control over what people think of it, where it goes, who reads it. And that's been a very good experience for me, because I think in the past I have tried to control and perhaps control people's opinions of me too much. But I trusted Vertebrate, the publishers. I trusted them because there was plenty of times where I thought, who's interested in my little messy life? And during those times of doubt, I thought, well, if one person just tells me that they felt less alone, by reading these words, then it's worth it. And I mean, it's only been out 2 weeks and I've got hundreds of messages like that. So I really feel like it was the right decision to put it out.
Yeah. And also, I suppose this also comes back to, it sort of says the Jen the world knew was a successful lawyer and running coach, all photo shoots and finish line smiles. But the truth was much darker. The real Jen Scotney, the one she hid from everybody, suffered with chronic fatigue, debilitating injuries, tragedy, grief, and at times had a will so beaten down by setbacks that there just didn't seem any point in going on. And it's almost like that Instagram versus reality, because everybody is dealing with something. And and I think like, you don't need to share your whole life. You don't need to expose everything. But then I suppose not people almost like not knowing that actually you're struggling to get out of bed, you're dealing with injury, but they're expecting you to be this amazing ultra runner and to be this incredible lawyer and barrister. And that it's almost like two different people or two different versions. And how are you doing at the moment? Are you still dealing with chronic fatigue or chronic illness?
No, I'm absolutely recovered from that. So really one of the lucky ones. And that was another reason why I thought there was value in sharing my story, because I know that when I was seriously ill, there just wasn't much hope. There wasn't hope from the kind of medical professionals. I felt like it just wasn't understood and I was just told to live with it. And I didn't really see people getting better. So I hope that this book finds its way into, or this story finds its way into the hands of people that might be going through chronic illness. And when I was ill, it was before the pandemic. So it also feels more relevant that there's many people sadly suffering with long COVID. And I've had a number of runners contact me, and it's, hopefully they feel less alone, because I do talk about that, just that experience of everybody else getting on, like getting out of bed and going for a run, stuff that I could never have even dreamt about doing, even though that's what I wanted to do, but my body just wasn't able to do that. So yeah, I'm fine now. And I suppose that's kind of been quite strange with the book coming out, is that I finished writing the book 2 years ago. So I've moved on, like processed quite a lot of what I went through. And yeah, but it's kind of new to other people and new to people around me that were there by my side at the time and just didn't know the extent maybe of how ill I got. And then also just how hard it's been adapting to that new life without running.
Yeah. I mean, one of the words that, I was going to say you've been fixated on, but I don't mean that in a negative way, but this resilience, to be honest, which you've shown throughout all of your life, that resilience, grit, determination, but resilience is the word that obviously, really does resonate with you. And you obviously, you started the Resilience Rising podcast on that. And I almost just want to find out a little bit more about when resilience just really, I don't know, when you started to really sort of associate with it, or you wanted to understand more about it and you wanted to learn more about it, when did that happen? Was there a point that you could pinpoint?
Well, actually, I started the podcast to try, because I thought I wasn't resilient. So I definitely didn't see it going back. And the reason why I thought I wasn't resilient is because I kind of felt like I crumbled when I couldn't run. And it's not really just about the running. You know, I really got to a point where I couldn't move, sit, sleep without being in constant pain. And I'm not pain free now, though I've had some surgeries and it's a bit more manageable. But I felt like I wasn't resilient. And I had this idea that to be resilient was to be kind of very stoic, very not crumble, not fall apart, that bad things happen and I'm just smiling and everything's great. And I wanted to know how I could do that. And I thought, well, maybe if I had an excuse to speak to experts, which was my podcast, like maybe then I can glean what it is to be resilient. And actually what happened was when I started speaking to therapists, coaches, psychologists, and just people that have been through really life-changing events. And I feel like everybody's got a story that would link to resilience. We've all been through something. What I found was that I was resilient, and the messiness is part of it. And we can be resilient by being vulnerable, by leaning on friends and support, by taking the time to process and accept what's happening. And if that's me sobbing on the sofa, then that's fine. That's all part of it. So I think it really gave me a wider understanding of resilience and what that could look like. And definitely I became less hard on myself for not being resilient. So yeah, it really, and when I had to read the audio book, so that was back in July, and it was the first time that I'd read the book out loud and the first time I looked at it for a while. And I had a lot of compassion for that girl in the book. I know it's me, but it feels at some points like it was so long ago, or I'd forgotten parts of it. And I just wanted to reach in and like let her know that she's doing well. She's okay. It's not going to be like it was for the whole time. You'll come through this.
That must be so, I was going to say, like, the combination of it almost being like so strange, because, you know, you've done your processing, like, you know, by even writing it and closing that chapter. And yes, it's gone off to the publishers, which was done, you know, like, a couple of years ago to go through its edits and everything else. And then you've changed, you have been through so much, and you have probably changed so much. And then suddenly you're looking at it through a completely different lens now. And the fact that you're having compassion for yourself is just, to be honest, it's so lovely to hear. Like, 'cause sometimes I think we all need that. We always need to be a little bit kinder. Because I don't know if it's because you have the podcast Resilience Rising. I now obviously associate you with resilience, but I just assume that you've always been resilient, probably because of the running and the endurance events and types of things that you've been through, where you know, that grit and determination to run these long distances. And then I just think when you have those experiences outdoors, you can then bring them with you into your work. So when you're having a tough or a difficult time, it's like, well, hold on, come on. I ran that 100-miler. I did what X, Y, Z, whatever it is. So actually I can handle this. And it's just quite interesting that you never thought that you were resilient.
Yeah. And I think I know that I've got a very different outlook and opinion on those endurance challenges too. I think like I never really signed up to the suffering. So I did have a really good time doing my races and my running. And I mean, but I just feel like the low points that you get on a race is just not comparable to what happens in life. You know, in those races, I'd chosen to be there. I'd often paid to be there, and it was a real privilege. And I think that, I mean, I got to this point afterwards where I just thought, oh, it's just the running was just pointless anyway. It's all just running around in a circle and who cares? But I've mellowed a little bit onto that, but I definitely, it's not such a big thing anymore. And I feel like if you ask me what my toughest 100 days were, it's not a single run that would come in that list. And what I've also had to face is that, you know, running 100 miles, I would get so much attention and so much love and so many congratulations. And it would be this very huge external validation at the end of a race. And yet my toughest times were those bedbound ones where nobody knew what I was going through. And I was, you know, I wish I could give people that same celebration and that same love just for getting out of bed, if that's what it took, if it was so hard. And so I think I don't see the importance of my endurance so much anymore. Like, it was fun. And I did have this point where I was told that I couldn't run, but maybe cycling would work. And I was like, right, I'm going to enter all these big cycling races. And I literally did. I got a place in one and had plans for other stuff. And then when it actually came to it for me, my knees still hurt cycling, like the vibrations. And I was just really questioning why I was doing this. And actually, I came to more a sort of gentler outlook, so that it's not about doing these huge challenges for me. It's not. And that's not to say that I don't miss running and I wish I could just, you know, go out like I used to and run for 20 miles and have a great time. If you could give me that back, I'd take it. But at the same time, I've definitely changed so that I'm okay without it. And life is really interesting and fun and extraordinary without doing big challenges. And that's been a huge switch, and one that I know people have come to me where they can't do what they used to do for various reasons, or can't get out and do these big challenges. And we've kind of found a little community where we don't have to prove ourselves or do anything that like that anymore.
What's bringing you that joy and happiness now? What does that look like?
Oh my God, Sarah, we are floating around space on a big ball of rock. Like, life is absolutely extraordinary anyway. And when I was really ill, things that brought me joy was just putting up some bird feeders and watching the birds. And I'm really lucky that I live in a beautiful part of the Scottish Highlands, and all my windows look down this loch. And I just the changing of the light and just everything just brings me joy that I can see outside my window. And just connections with people, and I don't have to be sleep deprived and push my body. And I think also now, when I look at some of the extraordinary athletes that are finishing these races, particularly, like, I really question how healthy it would be, and my body's been through so much. I wouldn't want to jeopardize it by running 3 days nonstop anymore. Yeah. That's been a huge change. Huge.
I'm thinking that you have an allotment. Is that right?
I did in the Peak District, but now in Scotland,
okay.
I've got my own garden. So we've just moved in March, so about 6 months ago. And I've got a huge garden that's completely wild at the moment.
And are you going to be growing I was going to say fruit and veg, but in Scotland, I don't know. Can you grow that up there?
Yes, it's not like the Arctic Circle. Yeah, I was teaching yoga, and everybody was paying in cash, like, really small change. And I saved it up, and I was like, I'm going to buy an apple tree. And so I put an apple tree in the garden, and then within a month, like, the deer had gone. So I do plan to, but I need to think about how I make sure that I can grow everything without the deer eating it, because it is lovely here. Like, we do have the deer and the squirrels and the rabbits all roaming the garden, but it's not great for my vegetable growing.
One of the things that I'd love to delve into a little bit more is around sort of the change that you went through in your life. So for example, for me, it was career in finance, 32, quit, changed, and, now living a much more sort of adventurous life, traveling more, doing these hikes around the world, starting the podcast, Tough Girl Challenges, a very, very different way of life. And, similar to you, similar but different in the way that you had almost like, it wasn't sort of a choice change. It was almost, unless it was a choice change, but I suppose from my perspective, I'm looking, it seems as though it was more of a forced change with the chronic fatigue, and it sort of says, sort of career burnout, I can see how they would sort of interlink, but having to drastically change your life. I'd love for you to talk maybe a little bit more around what happened then, the process, and how you came to be, Jen Scotney, coach, writer, podcaster, yoga instructor, gardener, mountain leader, professional speaker. That's because I think that would be really fascinating for people to learn more about that side.
Yeah, for me, I think the main process was giving up control, and that was a big change for me, and getting okay with uncertainty, getting okay with change. And I worked so hard to focus on my legal career from when I went to university. I did my postgraduate, I went down to London and really put everything into my career. And I don't regret that. I'm really proud of the cases that I worked on. I focused on young people in prison and care. But looking back at the hours that I was doing and that focus, it just wasn't sustainable. You can kind of see that now and see it in others as well that have been through similar. And when I tried to leave law a few times, but I definitely had some stories that I had to get another degree and I had to have this other career planned out. And what I've learned over the years is that I don't. And I have moved around, just really going with what feels right for me, what I enjoy, what I value. And so I now find it really exciting that, I don't know, we could do this in another 6 years and who knows where I would be and I hope I'll still be in this house with my garden. But in terms of that career and projects and things that I'm doing, who knows what I'd be doing in another 6 years. And that would have terrified me as a lawyer. But now I find that exciting. And I think it's really trusting that things will be okay, trusting me that whatever comes up, I'll have the skills to get through it. And that's definitely something that I don't recognize as that perfectionist lawyer that wanted to be just perfect. And I think it came from fear that if I'm the perfect lawyer and the perfect girlfriend, wife, and the perfect friend and perfect everything, then I can't be criticized. I can't, nothing will go wrong. And it did spectacularly for me. And it's definitely been forced in some areas, but now I think I'm okay with choosing the uncertainty and choosing change and just being open to what comes up. And yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. I think that letting go of control, it can be a bit scary. For me, I was just, do you have any advice and tips for people who are trying to like let go of that control, that perfectionism, that, wanting to control everything and almost just like letting go?
Sarah, that might be where the little trips and adventures and races come in, because I think what would work is just putting yourself in something new. For me, I was scared of doing anything that I wouldn't be good at, which just seems ridiculous now. I will pick up my sketch pad or I'll do things just for the joy of it, not because I'm good or not because of any final outcome. So if this is something where it kind of feels familiar, then maybe thinking, where can I be a beginner again? Where can I just let go of what I'm looking like or what I'm doing in terms of productivity and outcome, and just think, what can I have fun in? And racing was like that for me. Like running was, I didn't go into it thinking I'm going to be the best runner, get on podiums. Like it was a real surprise when it happened, when I did get on the podiums at races. I went into it because it just helped me process some of the grief and things that I was going through, but also was just a new challenge. And then somewhere along the way, I started being quite hard on myself and maybe taking it quite seriously. But now it's just new stuff. So one thing that I've done since I moved to my village is I've joined the local mountain rescue team, and I'm with some really experienced people there. I'm a beginner. I'm right at the start of my training, and I feel quite out of my comfort zone in a lot of things, but I'm embracing that. So yeah, finding those little ways to get out of a comfort zone can really, really help expand and let go of that grip of fear and control, I think.
How does it work in mountain rescue, as in terms of joining the team, being a beginner? Is there certain courses or amount of like hours you've got to spend on the mountains? You know, what does that look like to sort of build up the skills to get qualified to be a member?
Yeah, so I think most regional teams are autonomous, so it probably looks different in every team. But for the local one that I've joined, there's a cohort of 5 of us that have joined, and we are training every month. We've got a day and an evening every month, and then some extra first aid courses, and there's a skill list to tick off. And so we've all brought different skills. Like I've got the mountain leader background, so that's definitely an advantage in some areas. And yeah, just ticking off that competency. But it's been so lovely. Like the mentor that we've got from the team is amazing. And it's just really good to have that focus. I suppose one thing that I missed, well, a lot of things that I missed from running, but one of the things was kind of having a little focus. I used to have maybe a big race a year or a couple of other races, and there was a reason to get out in the really grim, dark, rainy nights. And I haven't had that since I stopped running and racing. So it's been really good to have a little focus and little goals to work towards and build up those skills.
Yeah. Do you still suffer from having, like, do you still get like negative thoughts, or where you can be too hard on yourself, or are you sort of managing that a little bit better?
I'm definitely managing it, but I still get it. It's part of being human, isn't it? I mean, like on the podcast today that I recorded, I was talking to another writer, and I look at her as being like, she's got all these qualifications in writing and absolute professional, and she's still got all these doubts as well. And I think maybe the goal isn't to not have any negative thoughts. I think the goal is more to just be able to challenge them, manage them, recognize them, that this is going to pass. And so, yeah, I mean, I do, but I'm human. I'm accepting that.
Yeah. I think I reframe like all the time and it's become like such, almost like such a habit that even if I hear like, so even when I hear like, you know, and people saying, "Oh, don't stop," I'm like, "Oh, that's a negative. It should be flipped. It needs to be keep going." And it, like, I know, and it sounds really weird, but when I hear like other people saying things, sometimes I have to stop myself from trying to reframe it for
everybody else.
Yeah, because it's probably a little bit annoying at times. It's like, no, I want to say, don't stop. I'm like, no, keep going. Or I hope it doesn't rain. Well, then you're asking for rain, so let's be like, bring on the sunshine. Let's focus on the sunshine and the positivity. With the mountain rescue and stuff and your knees, like how are they coping like with the mountains? Like, are you okay like hiking and carrying a pack or something, or do you know that what your distance is, that you is almost like your sweet spot?
Yeah, I think I'm just learning. And when I was first, so it's a bit of a spoiler, but I've got 2 knee replacements. And there was definitely, I mean, you needed to come to the surgeon and do some reframing, Sarah, because I was told a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to do, such as my careers and mountaineering. And I listened to that because I thought, well, these people know. And And that was also that sense of loss, not just from running, but my whole lifestyle. And actually what I've found, so it's probably 8 months since my last surgery. I've just been building it up and maybe reframing it as to let's see what we can do. And some people would say to me, so I was faced with a choice because the surgeon said, if I'm going to do this surgery, you need to promise that you will never run again. So that was the choice that I was faced with. And I had quite a few people go, oh, if anybody can run, it would be you. Oh, you'll come back. Oh, you'll show them. And that's not really been the mindset that I've gone in with it. I'm not out to kind of disprove them, the surgeons. I'm really grateful that I got the opportunity to have the surgery. And so I'm more just kind of curious, what can I do? And I've been taking things pretty slowly. I mean, the actual bending and the rehab needs to be done fairly, sadly, quite harshly. But I did that. In terms of, I just took things easy into building up gradually, getting up the mountains. And I'm really lucky that I've got some Munros on my doorstep, and it was such an achievement. And so I'm really grateful to climb those. And I've been doing longer things. I've been doing outdoor work this summer. So I've been carrying quite a heavy pack, doing expeditions with teenagers, and also is working on the weekend. So I'm getting to know what my limit is, and then seeing, can I build on that? And yeah, it's been just, again, like building trust with my body, trust with me, and knowing that I will know. And that's something, again, that somebody had said to me, like, you'll find your limit. And that's what I'm feeling. I don't feel like I'm being reckless or pushing too much, but I am just trying to find out what can I do. And so as part of the selection for the mountain rescue team, we had a day up on the hill. We were scrambling on Stucker Croyne, which is one of my local Munros, and then like dragging a stretcher down and things. And I was really happy how my knees were. And so, yeah, I'm hopeful that I can have an active lifestyle. Is it the one that I would choose? No, I wish I could run and get down hills pain free, but I feel like I'm making the best of what I've got at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I had this great phrase from another lady I interviewed recently, which is like, start where you are. Like, you've got to, you've just got to start, try it out, see what happens, see how you feel. And, like your other friends have said, like, you'll get to the point where you're like, oh yeah, okay, this is good. This is okay. I'm good at this point. Okay. Maybe I'll stay at this point for a little bit. Okay. We can move it forward. What have you got planned for 2025? Like, are you a goal setter, or are you still in the letting go of control? Because this is what I'm struggling with at the moment, because I'm like a real planner, but sometimes if your adventure's like 4 months, or that's going to take 6 months, you can plan like 2-3 years ahead, and which is not necessarily the best. I'm trying to not do that. But I'm just intrigued, with Resilience Rising, you've got the book coming out. Have you got any events, retreats, any more public speaking? What's going on over the next sort of couple of months in 2025?
I think I am at the opposite end of the spectrum, because I have nothing. I do have some events. So I've got some, be it like the running show, and so I've got some speaking events, which I'm really looking forward to a little bit. I do feel like I took some time away when I was ill and before the book. So that feels quite odd. I suppose there was this point where I was like, those requests for talking and interviews and sponsorship and things, they all just dry up because I was injured and not running and wasn't doing anything. So that feels quite interesting, because I suppose a lot of the conclusions and bits in the book is, well, I don't need this external validation. And then actually it is really nice to get to these events and see people and hear other people's stories. So that is in the diary. But honestly, no, I don't have anything.
Which is also lovely as well. I wanted to ask you about your yoga. How's your yoga going?
Yeah, so that was another thing that the surgeon said, oh, you won't be able to kneel and you won't be able to do this. But again, I think as I've gone on with my yoga practice, so I've probably been practicing yoga, I don't know, like 15 plus years. And then I've been qualified as a teacher for the last few. I find that my attitude to yoga and approach to yoga has changed too. So for me, it's less about what my body's looking like and those physical poses and more just about acceptance and just coming to the mat and just feeling into my body, just being present. And a lot of time on my yoga mat, I'm not actually moving or doing anything. I'm just sat there. So yeah, I think that I've really stepped away from I used to do vinyasa, which is quite a physical yoga brutal. And flowing and yeah, I'm going to do 8 chaturangas and things. So it's definitely changed and really is what I need at the moment. So it's still a big part of my life, but probably looking at what I do, people would think she's not actually doing much yoga.
Are you doing yin? I know that you've done a lot of yoga nidra, which I'll talk to you about in a minute, but have you done yin yoga?
Yes, I'm a qualified yin yoga teacher. And that is a type of yoga I like. So holding the poses for a lot longer, and they're mostly kind of floor based and seated. So yeah, I've offered retreats. I did a retreat this year. And I will probably offer them again. But actually I'm feeling quite fluid. And I think just that move to Scotland, it's just finding my roots here. And do I want to find locations in Scotland rather than be traveling back to the Peak District? And I did one in the Lake District. So yes, things will happen. It's not like I'm going to laze around in my garden for a whole year, but at the moment, I'm just enjoying, I suppose, just waiting to feel into what feels right and what feels good for me to offer.
Oh, well, I have to say I've done my yoga teacher training as well. I did it over in India, and they had like a day where they took you through all the different types of other types of yoga. And when we were doing yin yoga, I was literally just like, oh my God, this is me. This is my jam. Like lying on the floor, holding position. Like it sounds easy, but it is not. But I just felt it was just honestly amazing. And then I remember it was in Goa, and we got on a boat and we got taken to this sort of quiet beach on sort of like an island. And we had like a yoga nidra session. And it is just one of the most, well, do you want to share a little bit more about yoga nidra? Because I know you've done a couple of courses, sort of online courses, and it's because I just think it's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is beautiful. And what I like about yoga nidra is like now we're getting into the point where the science is sort of catching up and explaining what's happening. So yoga nidra is putting your consciousness in a different state. It's often translated as yogic sleep, but you're not asleep during it. Although often I have been asleep, but I've kind of just taken that as that's what my body needed. And it's now the science showing that 10 minutes of this deep resting, can be as beneficial as like hours of sleep. So it's really what I love about yoga nidra is just how accessible it is. And also, it is really, I love inviting people to get as comfortable as you possibly can. Like, how often are we allowed to do that? Especially when we're out at a sort of what we might see as exercise classes. And so, yeah, I mean, most of the time I'm teaching yoga nidra, which I find a bit sad. I want the benefit. I want to be lying there. I've also found that so last January, maybe I should do this again. Last January, I offered an online yoga nidra course on a Sunday evening. And for me, I also it was called Permission to Rest. And I really felt strongly I was kind of called to name it that. I feel like there's so much noise in this day and age about what we're doing and what we're producing, and even just looking at social media. And I know it's not real, but everybody seems to have these wonderfully, even just their coffee, and like they've got beautiful coffee tables that they've put it on. And, I'm just looking at my messy one and full of various maps and all sorts going on. And everything just looks so beautiful and curated and perfect. And I just think, oh, we just need to switch off. Just switch off, just rest. We don't always have to be doing stuff and producing stuff. And yeah, so it's really important for me when I have offered that for people. And I do love getting creative with yoga nidra, writing the scripts.
Oh no, it's beautiful. I was just about to have a giggle because so this is just like for you listening. So when me and Jen got on before we started recording the podcast, like we do a little video chat, and we're like both looking at the video screen, and I was like having to apologize because I've got like crazy hair going everywhere. I was gonna say your hair like wasn't like
Don't tell them that, Sarah.
I know. And I was literally like, oh, part of me was like, oh, it's okay because it's just Jen. Like not in a bad way, but it was just like, yeah. It's like, it's all good. Like there's no perfection here. And I think I definitely like, I am really struggling with the busyness and the productivity. And especially as getting older now, I probably talk about this all the time, but because I realize like, I know aging and getting older is such a privilege and I'm so happy to be, to be in this position. But then the other part of me is like, oh my goodness, in 17 years, I'm going to be 60. And if I only do one challenge a year, that's only 17 more challenges. I really need to make the most of this one precious life, which is awesome. And so then you end up trying to cram loads of adventures, loads of challenges, loads of stuff in to make the most of it. But then on the flip side, I suppose it's the yin and the yang, isn't it? On the flip side, it's also like, well, I didn't leave my career in banking where I was working ridiculous hours to still be working ridiculous hours and to be stressed out of my brain. And it's almost like, well, just relax, do more yoga, do more yoga nidra, and just, don't always be so busy and trying to be so productive all the time and get things done. And honestly, I do. I don't know if anybody else struggles with this, but I definitely struggle with trying to get that balance right. But it sounds as though you're nailing the balance, like, which I love.
I think I still feel that, particularly I'm in Scotland and it's be like a nice sunny day and I feel this pressure that I have to make the most of it and do something. And I catch myself, but actually, yeah, I mostly don't put that pressure on myself. And the last few times this year, I'm thinking particularly when I've taken time off, I've just gone off with my tent for a few days in Scotland. I went to the Cairngorms in June and I had absolutely no plan. I mean, I kind of vaguely told Marcus where I'd be for safety reasons, that I'm going to stay in this area. And it was so relaxing because I was just wandering from like, oh, that's an interesting rock. Oh, I haven't climbed that Munro. Like I did tick off some summits, but I hadn't gone with any intention to. I had a night at Bothy. I camped. And I think for me, when I'm not rushed and when I don't feel the pressure that I have to get somewhere, I can really slip more into the present and just really, be rather than doing. And so I've learned the hard way that if I just push, then eventually my body will force me to rest. And I suppose there is, I am the lucky one that I've got through ME and chronic fatigue syndrome when there's been many days where I thought I wouldn't get through it and there would be no hope. And that's precious to me. And I don't want to risk or jeopardize that in any way. So I don't have the balance always right. And there's be times where if you put a little fly on the wall, I'd be quite stressed and moaning. But what I think I'm better at is thinking this isn't sustainable. And what do I need to let go of? Or how do I get back to being in the moment? And yeah. And also I think back to those times, maybe those years where I did have a lot planned out, whether that was work or races or things. And I felt like time just flew by a lot quicker. Whereas now I'm sort of meandering around this little Scottish corner and it seems to stretch out. And I think that the difference is that I am more present.
Yeah.
And that's good.
That is really good. 100%. Being more present, being in the moment. Absolutely amazing. Jen, how can people find more information about you? Follow along with your events, your upcoming speaking.
Oh, I thought you were like follow along with my vegetable growing.
Well, I was about to say allotment, or follow along with your gardening. Learn how, to slow down. Give yourself permission to rest. Where are you
Absolutely.
most active or not active? And where can people find your book as well?
Yeah, so Instagram's probably the best place, and don't worry, there's no heavily curated shots there. It's my messy life and me with my messy hair up, sometimes up mountains. So that's at Jen Scotney. And then my book, Running Through the Dark, is out now with Vertebrate Publishing.
Fantastic, Jen. I'm going to put all of the links to the books, to your social media, so that people can find you, follow along, and read your incredible words and be inspired by what you're doing. But I would love for you to have the final words of advice, final words of wisdom, for other women out there who are maybe going through dark times at the moment, but they want to get through to the other side. They want to have that, be given that permission to rest and recharge and reset. What words of advice would you like to share?
Oh, well, it's more just that you're not alone. And there's been times where I've felt alone. And I think I'd say you're not falling behind, because I think we give so much noise and shine a light on those huge achievements that people have, and that these big, challenges that people are doing. And I've been guilty of that in the past, but actually you don't have to do that. And not everybody's doing that, even if it feels like it. So really just tell us about what you are doing as well. I really like just seeing people's little adventures, whether that is just like finding a new little bit of land that's near them that they didn't know, or watching the seasons turn. Like, everything's welcome. So I think that would be my advice.
Oh, I love your final words of advice, Jen. Thank you so much for coming back to us. Thank you so much for catching us up on what's been going on over the past 6 years. We definitely won't leave it as long next time. But yes, best of luck with the future. And thanks for coming back on the Tough Girl podcast.
Oh, thanks so much, Sarah.
Hey, tribe. How are you all doing? I hope you're all doing super well. I have to say, it is just so lovely doing the Tough Girl Podcast Extra and catching up with guests just to see what they have been up to since we first spoke to them. So Tough Girl Podcast Extra is when we go back, like this episode, and we catch up with previous guests that we've spoken to. So if you haven't listened to Jen's first episode, where at the introduction, I said, 36, vegan, ultrarunner, human rights lawyer, you can see what Jen's life was like sort of back then, and what she was doing, what she's up to. And I do think it's fascinating almost having these audio histories of women in the adventure and the physical challenge sporting world. Now, if you go and visit the website, www.toughgirlchallenges.com, there is a section dedicated to Tough Girl Podcast. So it's done by year. So Tough Girl Podcast 2024, you've got the 2023 episodes, all the way going back to 2015. Then we have a section dedicated to Tough Girl Extra. And in these episodes, you'll find all of my solo episodes where I do sort of regular 6-month updates. Do you know what I've been thinking, though? I think I need to rename them, because my most recent one, which I did, was on the 1st of August, 2024. And it's just reflecting on the past 6 months and future plans for 2024, insights, challenges and adventures. But that's probably not that helpful for people to even, because you obviously, you can't remember what I'm up to. I can barely remember what I get up to know what was covered off in the past 6 months or the beginning of 2024. So I probably think I need to rename them. But if you are interested in learning more about, what I've been up to for the past couple of years, they're all in the Tough Girl Podcast Extra section. But there's also other episodes with women who we've spoken to a few times. So I think the most I've had is maybe 3 times with a person. And I think I've kind of forgotten, it is Joe. Probably, probably Joe Bradshaw. Joe Bradshaw's been on the podcast a couple of times because we're following her sort of 7 Summits update. But also, even, catching up with like Laura Kennington, Ali Young, Alex Mason's been on a few times, Sally Kettle as well. Anna McNuff has been on a few times, Melissa Yori, Laura Try. So Laura Try was part of 7 Women, 7 Challenges, and then which was recorded in 2017, and we caught up with her in 2019 after she'd rowed 3,000 kilometers on the Talisker Atlantic Challenge. Anna Blackwell's been on the podcast twice. We've spoken with Jessica Dixie Mills. So definitely please do go and have a look, because I do think it is fascinating just to see what people were up to. So Challenge Sophie, we spoke with Challenge Sophie. She was one of the first guests actually came on the Tough Girl podcast back in 2015, and we caught up with her again in 2017. To be honest, I probably need to do another updated episode with her to see what she's been up to. The challenge that I have at the moment is, so I think during the COVID years, I was releasing like 2 episodes a week, and I was able to sort of produce a huge amount of content. And I'm just not able to do that at the moment. So it is 1 episode a week, and I do try and squeeze in bonus episodes when I can. But if you've got an amazing woman that who's done a great challenge, then please do send me an email, let me know. When I say I have a waiting list, it just means that I've got women who I'm in contact with, and then we haven't either been able to speak. So I'm like, right, I'll get you in on the next sort of interview time, which is probably going to be March 2025 when I'll start sort of interviewing again. And then by the time I've reached out, if you think about it, if I email 20 people, that's 20 weeks worth of content. So that's why it's such a struggle. And do you know what's amazing though? There's just so many incredible women out there doing these amazing challenges. And if you are brand new to the podcast, there's over 700 episodes of the Tough Girl podcast. And so I'd also say, like, even if you've listened to them all, thank you so much. I love you for listening. You can go back to the beginning and just sort of listen, because the episodes, I think, in my opinion, they are evergreen, because you can learn something from the women sharing their stories, whatever the year. If you're looking for more specific resources on the website, there is a resources section as well, and that's broken down into whether you're like an adaptive athlete, whether you're a mother going through pregnancy, whether you're a skier or snowboarder, whether you're into sailing, whether you just want to learn more about travelers, like solo women travelers, or you're interested in being an explorer or an expedition leader, scientists and researchers. We've spoken to fighters, cyclists, Olympians and pro athletes, triathletes, swimmers. There's a couple of ones, like, for example, like Marathon des Sables. There's a specific section for Marathon des Sables, because I've spoken to a lot of women who've done Marathon des Sables. There's a specific section for New Zealand, because I've hiked in New Zealand, but also we've spoken to other women who have, again, hiked in New Zealand, who have cycled in New Zealand, who've done triathlons over in New Zealand, who've run the length of New Zealand, or have done, Kathmandu coast to coast over in New Zealand. Frances Taylor, who cycled 3,000 miles around New Zealand. Faye Shepherd, cycling the length of New Zealand. So lots of, again, sort of information available for you. The podcast would not be where it is without the incredible support of the amazing patrons. So thank you so much for your monthly support. It really does make the world of difference. And if you'd like to pay it forward, they've got 2 options. If you are currently in a financially stable situation and you have some extra cash available and you'd like to pay it forward, then please do visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast, and you can sign up as a patron. All currencies. So from GBP, British pound sterling, US dollars, New Zealand, Singaporean dollars, the euro, wherever you are based in the world, there should be a currency for you. Especially, we also do it in Australian dollars as well. So please just go and check it out. So whether that's, $5 a month, £5 a month, 20, £25, $25 a month, it really does make a massive difference having a regular source of income coming in. It allows me to fund the running costs of, the website, the podcast, etc., and gives me sort of like a monthly income, which is super, super helpful. If you're not in a position at the moment, I get it. I totally understand. But what would be amazing is if you could tell one friend about the Tough Girl podcast. Say you've got a friend who's training for a marathon or triathlon, or they're looking to go do some climbing or do some solo walks, or doing something more like, ultra endurance, or doing some swimming or cycling. Please share the Tough Girl podcast with them. Please share the website. It's an incredible resource. If there's a specific episode that's really resonated with you, please share that episode. I think you can even WhatsApp the episodes now. You can find the links, share it. I would really, really appreciate it, because this is how we encourage more women like you to get out there, to get active, to get outdoors, to dream big, and then to also take action to go after your dreams and your challenges. So thank you so much for all your support. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.